My name is Daniel Hartman. I am 52 years old, and I live in Springfield, Illinois. I never imagined my life could change so drastically in the blink of an eye, but that is exactly what happened. This morning, I woke up early as I always do, just after dawn. I don't need an alarm anymore. My body has learned when it's time to rise and fight for a living. For the past 7 years, my routine has never changed. I slid out of bed quietly so I wouldn't wake Emily, my wife. I prepared breakfast, then walked into my son's room to help him start his day, helping him bathe, get dressed, and prepare himself for the morning. "Good morning, son," I said as I pulled open the curtains. "How did you sleep last night?" Ryan, who had just turned 18, looked at me from his specialized hospital bed. His face always carried a mixture of resignation and love, a combination that broke my heart every single time. "Pretty well," he said softly. "Just a bit of pain in my lower back." "All right," I replied. "Let's do the exercises Dr. Anderson recommended." Helping Ryan has never been easy since the accident. We had to renovate the bathroom, installing wall handles, a special shower chair, and a hospital-grade bed. Everything changed 7 years ago, the day he fell down the stairs at his middle school. He was only 11 back then. The doctors said the spinal injury affected everything below his waist. He wasn't completely paralyzed, but both of his legs had lost almost all strength and sensation. "Dad," Ryan said as I helped him sit up, "after therapy today, can we go to the park?" "If Dr. Miller gives permission after the checkup, we'll go," I answered with a smile. As I helped him with his morning routine, my thoughts drifted to the life I had left behind. My auto repair shop used to be my pride. Hartman Auto Repair. That was the name on the sign I painted myself. 20 years of hard work, loyal customers, the satisfaction of fixing any engine no matter how broken it was. But when Ryan had the accident, I didn't hesitate. I sold the shop to my best friend Michael, and from that day on, I dedicated my entire life to caring for my son. "Dad," Ryan said, snapping me back to reality. "Sorry, buddy, I was lost in thought." After getting him dressed, I wheeled him into the dining room. Emily was already awake, preparing coffee. Since I stopped working, she became the sole financial provider. She had a solid position as an administrative manager at an export company, and thanks to her salary, we could afford Ryan's therapy and medications. "Good morning," she said without turning around. "Breakfast is almost ready." "Good morning, Mom," Ryan replied cheerfully. "Today we're seeing Dr. Miller for Ryan's 3-month checkup," I said. I noticed Emily tense up, barely noticeable, but after 23 years of marriage, I recognized every subtle movement. "Today?" she asked, pouring coffee. "I thought it was next week." "I marked it on the kitchen calendar," she replied. She glanced at the calendar and nodded, her expression unreadable. "I have an important meeting today. I can't come." "That's fine," I said quickly. "I'll take care of everything." Breakfast passed in an uncomfortable silence. Emily kept checking her phone. "Work stuff," she always said whenever I asked. "What time will you be back?" she suddenly asked. "I'm not sure. After the appointment, I was thinking of taking Ryan to the park, if the doctor allows." Again, that tension crossed her face. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said sharply. "You know Ryan needs rest after examinations." "But Mom," Ryan protested softly, "I feel fine. I barely go anywhere except the hospital or therapy." "I said no," Emily snapped. "You want to risk your health for a moment of pleasure?" I looked at Ryan and saw the disappointment in his eyes. It hurt more than anything. "Emily," I said quietly, "you don't need to talk to him like that. Dr. Anderson said last week that fresh air could help." "And since when do you know better than I what's best for our son?" She shot back. Are you the one paying for the medication, for the therapy? Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. She was right. She carried the financial burden now. I swallowed my pride, as I had done countless times before. I refused to argue in front of my son. "All right," I said finally. "We'll go straight home after the consultation." Emily smiled in satisfaction, stood up, and kissed Ryan on the forehead. "This is for your own good, sweetheart. I promise this weekend I'll take you anywhere you want." "I understand, Mom," Ryan replied quietly. Before leaving, Emily handed me an envelope. "Dr. Miller always wants printed lab results. Don't lose them like you did last time." "I didn't lose them. The nurse had them." She waved it off and left. I heard her car engine fade into the distance. "Dad?" Ryan asked when we were alone. "Why does Mom always seem so tense?" "It's work stress," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. I washed the dishes, prepared everything, and helped Ryan into the car. The hospital was about 20 minutes away. On the drive, I tried to cheer him up. "If everything goes well today, we'll go to the park this weekend." "Really?" His eyes lit up. "Mom will allow it?" "I'll talk to her," I said, hoping my voice sounded confident, even though I had no idea how. At the hospital, we were greeted by Dr. Sarah Collins, Dr. Miller's assistant, a woman in her early 30s with a warm smile that always put Ryan at ease. "Good morning, Mr. Hartman, Ryan," she greeted us. "Dr. Miller had an emergency and won't be able to see you today." "Seriously?" I asked. "Do we need to reschedule?" "No need," she said calmly. "Dr. Jonathan Reed just joined the hospital. He specializes in spinal injuries like Ryan's. He'll take over today." I wasn't comfortable with the sudden change, but we had no choice. Dr. Collins led us to a different consultation room. Inside waited Dr. Reed, a man in his mid-50s with a serious face but kind eyes. "Mr. Hartman, Ryan," he said, shaking our hands. "I'm Dr. Reed. I'll be filling in for Dr. Miller today. It's a pleasure to meet you." "Likewise, doctor," I replied, still uneasy. "Let's take a look." He opened the medical file. Ryan Hartman, 18 years old. Spinal injury due to a fall 7 years ago. Ryan had been under continuous treatment with Dr. Miller ever since the accident. "Yes, doctor," I confirmed. "We've seen progress. Slow but steady." Dr. Reed nodded and stepped closer to Ryan. "May I run a few tests, Ryan?" he asked in a professional yet gentle tone. "Sure, doctor," my son replied. For the next half hour, I watched Dr. Reed perform a series of examinations. Some were familiar, tests Dr. Miller had done many times before. Others were entirely new. I noticed something unsettling in the doctor's expression, especially while he was testing the sensitivity in Ryan's legs. "Mr. Hartman," Dr. Reed finally said, "did you bring the latest lab results and x-rays?" "Yes, doctor." I handed him the envelope Emily had given me that morning. He studied the documents carefully. His expression grew increasingly serious, almost troubled. His eyes moved back and forth between the papers and my son before finally settling on me. "Mr. Hartman, would you mind if I spoke with your son alone for a moment?" My heart skipped. "Is something wrong?" I asked anxiously. "No, not at all," he said quickly. "This is standard procedure for teenage patients. We give them space to share things they might not feel comfortable saying in front of their parents." It felt strange, but I agreed and stepped out into the hallway. I waited for about 10 minutes, restless, my mind racing with possibilities. When I was finally called back in, I saw Ryan sitting rigidly on the bed, confused, almost frightened. "Are you okay, son?" I asked. "Yeah, Dad," but his voice lacked conviction. Dr. Reed asked me to sit. "Mr. Hartman," he said gravely, "I need to ask you a few questions about Ryan's accident and his treatment afterward." "Of course, doctor," I replied, my unease growing. According to the records, Ryan fell down the stairs at his school 7 years ago. Is that correct? Yes. I was at my auto shop when I got the call. By the time I arrived, he'd already been taken to the hospital. Dr. Miller handled everything from the beginning. And you personally saw the original X-rays and MRI scans. I mean, Dr. Miller explained them to us. I don't really understand medical imaging, but I trusted his diagnosis. Dr. Reed nodded slowly, as if processing something. And your wife, was she present during those explanations? Yes, we always attended important consultations together, though lately she's been extremely busy with work. Dr. Reed reviewed the documents again, then stood up and walked to the illuminated X-ray panel on the wall. He clipped one of the images into place. Mr. Hartman, have you ever noticed anything unusual about your son's behavior, movements that don't quite match his diagnosis? I don't understand what you mean, I said, my anxiety now unmistakable. Dr. Reed stared at me for a long moment, as if weighing his words. Finally, he stepped closer and lowered his voice. Mr. Hartman, I need you to stay calm about what I'm about to say. My blood ran cold. There are serious inconsistencies in your son's medical records. What do you mean? I asked, my breath catching. He glanced at Ryan, who was watching us nervously, then leaned even closer, almost whispering. Do not sleep at home tonight. Contact the police. The words struck me like lightning. For a moment, the world seemed to stop spinning. What? Was all I could manage. I can't explain more right now, he whispered. There are cameras here. I need time to review older records and conduct further examinations. But something is very wrong, Mr. Hartman. Something is seriously wrong with your son's diagnosis. I sat frozen, unable to speak or move. Dr. Reed straightened, slipping back into a professional tone. I'll prescribe a new pain medication for Ryan's back, he said loudly, and I'd like to see him again next week for follow-up. He handed me the prescription and a business card. My personal number is on the back, he said quietly as he shook my hand. Call me once you're somewhere safe. We left the consultation room together. Ryan looked at me, confused. What did the doctor say, Dad? You look pale. Nothing important, buddy, I said, even as my world felt like it was collapsing. Let's go home. On the drive back, Dr. Reed's words echoed relentlessly in my mind. Don't sleep at home. Call the police. What did that mean? Why would he say something like that? I glanced at Ryan through the rearview mirror. He was staring out the window, unaware of the storm raging inside me. Dad, are you okay? He asked suddenly. You've been really quiet. I'm fine, I replied, forcing my voice to sound normal. I'm just thinking about what the doctor said. About the new medicine? Yes. I didn't want to scare him, but I didn't understand what was happening either. What I did know was this. I had to protect my son. When we arrived home, I noticed Emily's car was gone. That surprised me. She usually didn't return until late evening, and it was still early afternoon. I helped Ryan inside. Everything looked normal. Yet the doctor's warning had changed how I saw the house. Now I scanned my own home with suspicion, searching for something, though I didn't know what. What do you want to eat, buddy? As I settled him on the living room couch. Anything's fine, but honestly, I feel sleepier than hungry. Sleepy? Yeah, I think the medicine Dr. Reed gave me makes me drowsy. A chill ran through me. He didn't mention drowsiness, I said carefully. Did you take the medicine at the hospital? Yeah, a nurse gave me a pill while you were talking to the doctor. That felt wrong. I don't remember any nurse giving him medication. Before I could ask more, I heard a key turn in the front door. Emily stepped inside. Oh, you're already home, she said, her tone somewhere between surprise and irritation. Yes, the hospital wasn't too busy today, I replied, watching her closely. So, how did it go? She asked, setting her bag down. Fine, I said, keeping my voice neutral. But Dr. Miller wasn't there. We saw another doctor. She froze just for a second. Another doctor? Who? Dr. Reed. He just joined the hospital. She nodded slowly. And what did he say?
The same as always. Ryan's improving gradually. He prescribed a new painkiller for his back. I chose not to mention Dr. Reed's warning. Something inside me told me to be careful. Good, she said, visibly more relaxed. Then she turned to Ryan. And you, sweetheart, how do you feel? Tired, Mom. I think I'll lie down for a bit. Yes, go rest, she replied, gently, too gently now. Sleep well. I helped Ryan to his bedroom. When I returned to the living room, Emily was speaking on the phone in a low voice. The moment she saw me, she ended the call. Who was that? I asked. Work, she replied shortly. Have you eaten yet? Not yet. I was about to cook something. Let me handle it, she said quickly. You must be exhausted. Her sudden kindness confused me. Normally, after a long day at work, she was the one who waited for me to prepare dinner. While Emily cooked, I sat on the couch pretending to watch television, though my mind was racing. Dr. Reed's words, Emily's strange behavior, the medication Ryan supposedly received at the hospital. Everything spun together in my head. My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. This is Dr. Reed. Are you alone to talk? I glanced toward the kitchen. Emily was busy. I replied quickly. No, my wife is home. Almost immediately, another message appeared. I understand. When you can speak privately, call me. This is urgent. I put my phone away just as Emily stepped out of the kitchen. Who was that? She asked. No one. Just a message from the phone carrier. We ate dinner in an uncomfortable silence. Emily tried to keep the conversation light, asking trivial questions, but I could barely focus enough to answer. Is something wrong with you? She asked at last. You've been awfully quiet. Just tired, I lied. It's been a long day. Why don't you rest? She suggested. I'll wash the dishes. Her insistence I rest felt increasingly suspicious, but I agreed. I needed time alone to think. In our bedroom, I closed the door and pulled out my phone. I hesitated. What if Emily overheard me calling Dr. Reed? Instead, I sent a message. Can you explain what's going on? The reply came quickly. I've found serious discrepancies in your son's medical reports. The x-rays you provided today do not match Ryan's symptoms. I need you to bring Ryan back to the hospital tomorrow without your wife. And for your safety, please consider very carefully what I told you earlier. My heart pounded. What did he mean? Were the x-rays fake? Was Emily involved in something illegal? It seemed impossible, yet doubt had taken root. I decided to investigate on my own. Quietly, I slipped out of the bedroom and headed to Emily's home office. I knew she kept important documents in a locked filing cabinet, and I also knew she hid the key in the third drawer of her desk beneath a stack of papers. The house was silent. Ryan was still asleep. I could hear Emily washing dishes in the kitchen. I entered the office and closed the door silently. I found the key quickly and opened the cabinet. There were folders organized by category: house, work, insurance, Ryan. I took the last one. Inside were stacks of medical reports, each signed by Dr. Miller. I scanned them quickly, unable to understand most of the medical terminology. What stood out was the pattern. Monthly reports, identical formats, only the numbers changed. At the bottom of the folder, I found something that made my breath catch. Bank transfer records. The recipient? Dr. Miller. These weren't payments for medical consultations. They were large sums, transferred regularly and on dates that didn't match our hospital visits. My mind began to connect the dots. Emily, bribing a doctor? For what? None of it made sense. Footsteps approached. I quickly put everything back, locked the cabinet, and returned the key to its hiding place. I sat at the desk pretending to review insurance bills just as Emily opened the door. "What are you doing in here?" she asked suspiciously. "Looking for Ryan's health insurance payment records," I replied without looking up. "I want to understand exactly what's covered." "Let me handle that," she said, stepping closer. "You don't need to worry about it." "I know, but I want to understand it better. I'm the one who takes Ryan to all his appointments." She stared at me, evaluating. The documents are in the blue folder in the cabinet, but it's locked. I can't find the key. She was testing me. She knew exactly where the key was. Oh, I said evenly. That's okay. You can explain it to me later. I stood up and walked toward the door. Why the sudden interest? She asked before I left. You've never cared about administrative stuff before. It's not sudden, I lied. I've always cared. I just trusted you to handle it. Now that Ryan's improving, I want to be more involved. Her tone shifted instantly. Improving? What exactly did that doctor say? He said the exercises are starting to work, and Ryan is showing better sensitivity in both legs. She visibly relaxed. Oh, Dr. Miller said the same thing last time, but you know recovery is very slow. We shouldn't get our hopes too high. I know. I left the office and went to Ryan's room. He was still asleep. I sat beside him, watching him breathe. He looked so peaceful, so vulnerable. Could it be that all these years? No, I refused to finish the thought, but the doubt was already there. I knew I had to speak to Dr. Reed as soon as possible, but I couldn't leave Ryan alone with Emily, not after what I saw. I messaged Dr. Reed again. Can we meet tonight? This is urgent. The reply came almost instantly. I'm on night shift. Come to the hospital at 10 p.m. Ask for me in the ER. Now I needed an excuse to leave the house without raising suspicion. I returned to the living room where Emily was watching television. I'm worried about the car, I said, sitting beside her. The engine is making a strange noise. I think I should take it to Michael's garage tonight. Tonight? She asked, surprised. Can't it wait until tomorrow? Better now, I said. Tomorrow we're supposed to go back to the hospital for Raya's blood work, remember? She studied me, suspicious, but then nodded. All right, just don't be long. At 9:30 p.m., I left the house under the pretense of going to the garage. Instead, I drove straight to the hospital. My mind wouldn't stop racing. Could Emily, the mother of my child, the woman I'd spent over 20 years with, be lying to me? And what did Ryan have to do with all of this? At the hospital, I asked for Dr. Jonathan Reed in the ER. A nurse directed me to a small consultation room. Minutes later, Dr. Reed entered and closed the door behind him. Mr. Hartman, thank you for coming. We don't have much time, so I'll get straight to the point. He pulled out a folder and opened it on the table. These are the X-rays and MRI scans your wife provided today, through you. He pointed to several images. And these, he continued, sliding another set forward, are what I just retrieved from the hospital's old archives.
Dr. Reed placed the two sets of images side by side. Even with my complete lack of medical knowledge, I could clearly see they were different. This one, he said, pointing to the first set, shows a severe spinal injury at the L3-L4 level with compression of the spinal nerves. An injury like this could explain Ryan's partial paralysis. Then he pointed to the second set. But this, he continued, which are the original images taken when Ryan was admitted 7 years ago, shows only a mild sprain and some bruising. There is nothing here that could cause paralysis of any kind. I stared at the images, unable to process what I was seeing. What does this mean, doctor? I finally asked. Dr. Reed looked at me gravely. It means, Mr. Hartman, that someone has falsified your son's medical records for years. Someone with access to the hospital system and enough medical knowledge to maintain the lie. My throat went dry. Dr. Miller is a strong possibility, he went on carefully, but he would have needed help. Someone close to Ryan, someone who could maintain the situation at home. He never said Emily's name. He didn't need to. But why? I asked, my voice breaking as my world collapsed around me. Why would anyone do this? That's what we need to find out, he replied. But right now, the most important thing is determining Ryan's true condition. I need to examine him again, without your wife present, and perform tests that Dr. Miller either never conducted or deliberately concealed.
My voice came out almost as a whisper. "Are you saying my son might not actually be paralyzed?" "That is a possibility we cannot ignore," Dr. Reed answered cautiously. "The examination I performed today showed normal reflexes in both legs, something that should not exist with the type of injury described in these falsified reports." He paused. "And when I spoke with Ryan alone, I sensed hesitation, fear, as if he was afraid to talk about his condition." The words hit me like a hammer. Ryan pretending? No, my son would never do that. But then what was happening? "Doctor," I said, forcing myself to stay calm, "are you suggesting that my wife and Dr. Miller have been deceiving Ryan and me for years? That my son doesn't actually need a wheelchair? That he might be able to walk?" "I'm not stating anything as fact yet," he replied carefully. "I'm only presenting serious inconsistencies. But yes, that is a possibility we must consider. And if it's true, this would be a severe case of medical abuse." I rubbed my face with both hands, struggling to absorb everything. "So, what do I do?" I asked finally. "For now, act normal," he said firmly. "Do not confront your wife. We need more evidence." He continued, "Bring Ryan to the hospital tomorrow as planned. Say it's for the blood tests. I'll make sure those are done, but I'll also conduct additional examinations." Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small voice recorder. "I suggest you carry this," he said. "Record any suspicious conversations with your wife or with Ryan when you're alone. We need to understand what's really going on." I took the recorder with trembling hands. "And for your safety," he added, "I highly advise that you do not sleep at home tonight. Do you have somewhere you can stay with Ryan?" I thought of my older sister, Margaret, who lived across town. "Yes, I can stay with my sister." "Good," he said. "Find an excuse and leave tonight with Ryan. Don't tell anyone where you're going, not even your sister. Just say you're staying one night." "Do you think we're in danger?" I asked, feeling chills crawl up my spine. "I don't know for sure," he replied honestly. "But if my suspicions are correct, we're talking about people who managed to keep a child in a wheelchair for 7 years without medical cause. I don't know how far they'd go to protect that secret." My blood froze. I nodded, slipping the recorder into my pocket. "One more thing," he said before I left. "Search your house. Look for anything unusual, documents, records, anything that might explain why someone would do this." "I will, doctor," I promised. I left the hospital with my mind in chaos. How could the life I believed was built on solid ground collapse so completely? How had I not noticed something was wrong for all these years? Yet, as I drove home, a spark of hope ignited in my chest. If this was true, if Ryan wasn't truly paralyzed, then he could reclaim a normal life. He could walk, run, live like any other young man his age. The thought filled me with overwhelming joy and deep terror. What I couldn't understand, what refused to make sense, was why. Why would Emily, his own mother, do this? What could she possibly gain by forcing our son into a wheelchair for years? Nothing added up. When I arrived home, I noticed the light in Emily's office was on. She was probably working late, as usual. I entered quietly and went straight to Ryan's room. He was awake, reading. "Where were you, Dad? Mom said you went to the garage." "I did," I said, sitting on the edge of his bed. "But I had to stop somewhere else first." I hesitated. "Hey, buddy, how would you feel about staying at Aunt Margaret's place tonight?" His eyes lit up instantly. "Really? I haven't seen Aunt Margaret in forever. Can we go now?" "Yes," I said softly. "But we need to be quiet. Your mom is working, and I don't want to disturb her. I'll text her once we arrive." I helped Ryan get dressed and packed a small overnight bag.
As I did, I turned on the recorder in my pocket. "Ryan," I said gently, "can I ask you something?" "Sure, Dad." "How did you feel about Dr. Reed today? What did you think of him?" Ryan looked away. "He was nice, friendly." "What did you talk about while I was outside the room?" His face tensed. "Nothing important," he said quickly. "He asked about school, friends, stuff like that." I pressed gently. After a moment, he hesitated. "He also asked if I'd ever tried standing on my own, without help, and if I ever felt like I could move my legs more than the doctors said." My heart began pounding. "And what did you say?" "I told him the truth," Ryan whispered. "Sometimes, when I'm alone, I feel like I might be able to try." I could barely breathe. "But Mom said I should never try. She said it could make my spine worse." Inside, I was screaming. Everything Dr. Reed suspected was unfolding right in front of me. "Did you ever tell Dr. Miller about this?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Yes, once," Ryan said. "But he told Mom, and she got very upset." "What did she say?" Ryan swallowed. "She said, 'Sometimes we confuse what we want with what's real.'"
My thoughts had deceived me. And if I kept saying things like that, Dad would be disappointed in me. I felt something shatter inside my chest. My own child had been suffering in silence, believing that I would be disappointed in him simply for wanting to walk. "Ryan, look at me," I said, holding his face gently with both hands. "Never, never will I be disappointed in you for wanting to get better, for wanting to walk. On the contrary, that would make me the happiest man in the world." His eyes filled with tears. "Really, Dad?" "Really, son," I replied as I pulled him into a hug. "And I promise we'll find out the truth together." Leaving the house without Emily noticing turned out to be easier than I expected. She was still in her study, probably on the phone, because I could hear her murmuring behind the closed door. I helped Ryan into the car and placed his wheelchair in the trunk. "We're not saying goodbye to Mom?" Ryan asked quietly. "She's very busy with work," I said. "I'll text her once we arrive at Aunt Clara's place." As I drove, my mind replayed everything that had happened that day. It all felt like a nightmare, but the evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. In the back seat, Ryan was unusually quiet. "What are you thinking about, son?" I asked, glancing at him through the rearview mirror. "About what you said earlier, about how you wouldn't be disappointed if I could walk." His voice trembled slightly, and I felt a mix of pain and anger, thinking about what they had made my son believe. "Ryan," I said firmly, "I want you to know something. I love you exactly as you are. If tomorrow you can walk, I'll still love you. If you can never walk, I'll still love you. There is absolutely nothing that could ever change that." I saw him smile shyly in the mirror. "Thank you, Dad." We arrived at my sister's place, Aunt Clara's apartment. She lived in a small unit across town. I hadn't visited her in months, and I felt guilty showing up unannounced, but I knew she would understand. "Daniel? Ryan?" she exclaimed in surprise as she opened the door. "What are you doing here at this hour?" "We need your help, Clara," I said, wheeling Ryan inside. "Can we stay here for the night?" She immediately sensed that something was wrong. She had always been perceptive. "Of course," she said, without hesitation. "Is everything all right? Where's Emily?" "I'll explain later," I said, glancing meaningfully at Ryan. "For now, we just need some rest." She understood and didn't press further. That was always her way, kind and wise. She helped us prepare the small guest room. "Ryan, you sleep on the bed. Daniel, I'll set up the sofa bed in the living room." After Ryan was comfortable and half asleep, I stepped into the living room where Aunt Clara was waiting with 2 cups of coffee. "All right," she said softly. "Now tell me, what's really going on?" I hesitated. I didn't know how much to say. If my suspicions were wrong, I could be planting something terrible in her mind about Emily. But I needed someone I could trust, and Clara had always been my anchor. "I can't explain everything yet," I said, half lying. "But there's something strange about Ryan's medical condition. A new doctor noticed serious irregularities in his medical records today and suggested we leave the house for the night." She stared at me wide-eyed. "Irregularities? What kind?" "I'm not completely sure yet," I said, lying again. "Tomorrow, I'll take Ryan in for further tests. But for now, I need your help. Don't tell anyone we're here, not even Mom. And if Emily calls, just say you don't know anything." "Daniel, you're scaring me," she said quietly. "Do you think Emily—" "I don't know what to believe," I cut in. "All I know is that I have to protect Ryan until I understand what's really happening." She nodded slowly and took my hand. "You know you can rely on me for anything." "I've always known that. Thank you." Before I could say anything else, my phone vibrated. It was Emily. Aunt Clara looked at me anxiously as I answered. "Where are you?" Emily asked without greeting. Her voice was tense. "We're at Clara's place," I replied calmly. "Ryan wanted to see her, and since we have to be at the hospital early tomorrow, I thought it would be better to stay here." "Why didn't you tell me first?" Her tone was cold and controlled, but I could hear the anger beneath it. "I left a note in the kitchen," I lied. "I didn't want to disturb you while you were working." "There was no note," she replied sharply. "I'm coming there now to pick you up." "No," I said quickly. "It's late, and Ryan's almost asleep. We'll come home after the hospital tomorrow." There was silence on the other end. "Daniel," she finally said, her voice carrying a tone I had never heard before, almost threatening. "What exactly did that doctor say to you today?" A chill ran down my spine. "I already told you, nothing special, just that Ryan's making progress." "Are you sure he didn't say anything else?" she pressed. "I'm sure. Why?" Another pause. "It's nothing," she said. "I'm just worried he said something that made you act impulsively like this." "There's nothing impulsive about visiting my own sister," I replied, keeping my voice light. "Before Ryan's accident, I used to come here all the time." "Fine," she said at last. "But tomorrow I want both of you home early, and I'm coming to the hospital with you." "All right," I said, lying again. "I'll call you after we're done." I ended the call and looked at Aunt Clara, who had heard everything. "I've never heard her sound like that," she said. "So controlling." "I've never either," I replied, though the truth was, I had noticed small details like this for years and always found excuses to ignore them. That night, I barely slept. When I finally did, I had a nightmare. Ryan stood up and ran towards me, while Emily chased him, pushing a wheelchair. The next morning, we had breakfast early. Aunt Clara had made chicken porridge, Ryan's favorite. I watched him eagerly eat and wondered how many other things had been taken from him over the years. "Aunt Clara," Ryan said suddenly, "can I ask a favor?" "Of course, sweetheart. What is it?" "Can I borrow some sweatpants? They're really old and uncomfortable." She looked at me confused. "Ryan, I don't have clothes your size." "It's okay if they're too big," he said, glancing at me for approval. "I want to try something today." I immediately understood what my son was thinking and felt a mix of pride and fear. He was taking the initiative, testing his limits, challenging what they had made him believe for years. "Of course, son," I said firmly. "I'm sure Aunt Clara has something you can wear." Without fully understanding, but sensing how important it was, she went to her room and returned with a pair of worn but comfortable sweatpants. "They're a bit old," she said, handing them to him. "Thank you, Aunt Clara," he replied, with a smile I hadn't seen in a long time.
When it was time to go to the hospital, I helped Ryan into the car. But before putting the wheelchair away, I stopped. "Do you want to try going without the wheelchair today?" I asked softly. His eyes widened, filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "Can I?" "We can try," I said. "I'll help you. If you get tired or feel pain, the wheelchair is in the trunk." Ryan nodded and took a deep breath. "I want to try." Carefully, I helped him out of the car, supporting him as he tried to stand. His legs trembled, but he managed to stay upright. We took a few small steps. His muscles were clearly weak from years of not being used, but there were no signs of paralysis, nothing that should have existed according to the false diagnosis. "You're amazing, son," I said, holding back tears. "It feels strange," he said, "but good, like my legs remember something I forgot." We walked slowly toward the hospital entrance. Every step was a small victory. Some patients and nurses stared at us curiously, but no one said anything. At the reception desk, I asked for Dr. Jonathan Reed. The staff informed me that he was already waiting in consultation room 5. When we entered, the expression on his face as he saw Ryan walking with my support was a mixture of amazement and confirmation. "Good morning," he said, closing the door behind us. "I see you decided to try something new today." "It was Ryan's idea," I replied proudly. Dr. Reed smiled at him. "That's very brave. How do you feel?" "I'm tired, but I'm okay. It doesn't hurt." "That's remarkable," the doctor replied. "I'd like to run a few tests today, different from any you've had before, if you agree." Ryan looked at me for reassurance. I nodded. "All right, doctor," he said. For the next hour, I watched Dr. Reed conduct a series of examinations, checking reflexes, sensitivity, muscle strength, helping him walk several meters, bend his knees, and move his legs in different directions. All things that should have been impossible under the previous diagnosis. "Mr. Hartman, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" the doctor said afterwards. "Ryan, you don't mind waiting here, do you? You can rest on the examination bed." We stepped out into the hallway. Dr. Reed's face was serious but resolute. "There is no doubt anymore, Mr. Hartman. Your son has no spinal nerve injury that justifies the use of a wheelchair. His legs are weak from disuse, and he will need intensive physiotherapy, but neurologically, everything is functioning normally." Even though I had suspected it, hearing the confirmation from a doctor still hit me hard. "You're absolutely sure?" I asked. I needed to hear it again. 100%. I reviewed all the original test results I could find in the archives. Ryan's fall 7 years ago caused only bruising and a mild sprain, nothing that damaged his spinal cord. All subsequent reports that formed the basis of his treatment were clearly falsified. I leaned against the wall, feeling as though my own legs might give out. "Why?" I asked. It was the only word I could manage. Why would someone do this? "That's what we need to find out," he replied. "But first, I need to ask, did you find anything at home last night?" "I didn't have time to search thoroughly. We left immediately after speaking with you. But yesterday, before coming to the hospital, I found bank transfer records in Emily's filing cabinet, payments to Dr. Miller. Large sums, far beyond normal consultation fees." Dr. Reed nodded. "That confirms my suspicion of bribery, but it still doesn't explain the motive." "So what do we do now?" I asked. "I've already contacted a colleague who works closely with the police. His name is Detective Evan Brooks. He specializes in medical negligence and abuse cases. He'll be here this afternoon to speak with you. And in the meantime, I recommend Ryan stay here to begin physiotherapy. We have an excellent rehabilitation team." I hesitated. Should I go home and face Emily? Dr. Reed thought for a moment. "Not yet. That would be too dangerous without solid evidence. Detective Brooks will likely want to search your house, but he'll need a warrant. What you can do is return home when you know Emily isn't there and look for more evidence. Any documents, anything that explains why they maintained this lie for so many years." I nodded.
The idea of sneaking into my own house felt surreal, but I understood it was necessary. "What should I tell Ryan?" I asked. "The truth. At least part of it. Tell him the tests show his condition isn't as bad as previously believed, that with therapy he can recover. There's no need for him to know about the falsified documents or the possibility of his mother's involvement yet. That would be too traumatic." We returned to the consultation room. Ryan looked at us with hopeful eyes. "Is there good news, Dad?" he asked. I sat beside him. "Dr. Reed reviewed your test results, and it turns out your spine is much healthier than we thought. With therapy, you can walk normally again." His face lit up with a joy that broke my heart. 7 years stolen from a normal life. "Really?" he asked, looking back and forth between the doctor and me. "Are you not just saying that to make me happy?" "It's true," Dr. Reed confirmed. "Your legs are weak from not being used, but with intensive therapy, you can fully recover." Ryan began to cry, first silently, then with sobs that shook his entire body. I held him tightly. "Everything's going to be okay, son," I whispered. "I promise." Once he had calmed down a little, Dr. Reed explained the plan. Ryan would stay in the hospital for a few days to begin intensive therapy. He assured me I could visit him every day. "What about Mom?" Ryan asked. Dr. Reed looked at me, letting me answer. "She's very busy with work right now," I said, hating myself for continuing to lie, but knowing it was necessary for the moment. "I'll explain everything later, and she'll definitely come visit you." Ryan nodded, though I could see doubt in his eyes. After leaving Ryan with the physical therapist, Dr. Reed took me to his office so we could talk freely. "Your wife has probably realized you didn't come home," he said. "She's been calling." I checked my phone. 5 missed calls and several messages from Emily. "Yes," I said. "I haven't answered yet." "Good. Keep your distance for now. Once Detective Brooks arrives, we'll decide on the next steps." I nodded, but one question kept circling my mind. "Doctor, there's something I still don't understand. If all this is true, if they've been lying to us for years, how did they get Ryan to go along with it? I mean, he must know if he can move his legs or not." Dr. Reed let out a slow breath. "In cases like this, psychological manipulation is extremely powerful, especially when it begins at a young age. If an 11-year-old child is repeatedly told that he's seriously ill, that any improvement he feels is just imagination, that trying to walk could cause permanent damage, eventually he will believe it." And when you add to that the fear of disappointing his father, as seems to have happened here, the doctor didn't need to finish the sentence. I understood exactly what he meant, and the thought of the psychological damage inflicted on my son made me feel nauseous. "According to you, doctor, he can recover not only physically, but mentally as well?" "Yes," he continued gently, "with the right support. Ryan is still young, and he has already shown remarkable resilience. The fact that he wanted to try walking today tells me that, deep down, he always knew the truth." His words brought me a small measure of comfort. My phone rang again. It was Aunt Clara. "I need to take this, doctor," I said. "It's my sister." "Of course, Daniel." "Emily is here," my sister whispered urgently. Her voice was low and tense, as if she were hiding. "She's asking about you and Ryan. I told her you left early and that I didn't know where you went. She doesn't believe me." "Are you alone?" I asked. "No," Aunt Clara replied. "There's a man with her. He says his name is Dr. Miller. I don't like the way he's looking at me, Daniel. I'm scared." My blood froze in my veins. "Listen to me very carefully, Clara." I forced calm into my voice. "Leave the apartment. Tell them you have an urgent appointment. Go to Mom's house and stay there until I call you." "What's really going on, Daniel?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'll explain everything later, I promise. But right now, I need you to trust me and do exactly as I say." There was a pause. "All right," she said softly. "I love you, little brother." "I love you too. please be careful." I ended the call and turned to Dr. Jonathan Reed. "Dr. Miller is with my wife at my sister's place," I said. "They're looking for us." Dr. Reed's expression hardened. "I'm calling Detective Brooks right now. We need to move faster." While he was on the phone, I stepped closer to the window and looked down at the parking lot. Among the cars, I spotted a familiar blue vehicle. My skin prickled. "Doctor," I interrupted, "I think my wife is here." "Are you sure?" he asked, hurrying to the window. "That blue Toyota, that's Emily's car." He studied it for a moment, then acted decisively. "We need to move Ryan immediately. I'll instruct hospital security to not allow anyone asking for you to enter." We rushed to the physiotherapy area where we had left Ryan. He was practicing with the therapist, struggling to stand while holding on to the parallel bars. Watching my son fight to reclaim what had been stolen from him filled me with both pride and fury. "What's going on, Dad?" Ryan asked when he saw our expressions. "We need to change rooms," I said calmly, "just as a precaution." Dr. Reed spoke quickly with the therapist, who nodded and helped Ryan into his wheelchair, this time only as a temporary measure to move faster. "I'm taking you to the oncology ward. No one will think to look for you there." As we moved through the corridors, my phone buzzed again. A message from Aunt Clara. "Emily and that doctor just left. They said they're going to the hospital. Be careful." I showed it to Dr. Reed. "They're on their way," I said. He nodded and quickened his pace. We arrived at a quiet room on the 4th floor. A nurse helped Ryan lie down on the bed. "This room isn't registered under any patient's name. You'll be safe here until Detective Brooks arrives, less than an hour, hopefully." "And if they find us before then?" I asked. "Security has been instructed to not let them into this area, but to be safe, lock the door from inside and don't open it for anyone except me or Nurse Sarah Tollins." I thanked him, and he left with a promise to return soon. When we were alone, Ryan looked at me confused and frightened. "Dad, what's really going on? Why are we hiding from Mom?" I sat beside him, choosing my words carefully. I didn't want to lie anymore, but I couldn't burden him with the full truth all at once. "Ryan, there's something you need to know," I said, holding his hand. "Dr. Reed discovered that your condition isn't what we were told all these years. Your spine is fine. There's no permanent damage. With therapy, you can walk normally again." His eyes widened. "Seriously? But Dr. Miller always said—" "Dr. Miller was wrong. Or at least he didn't tell us the whole truth." Ryan processed this in silence, his face a storm of emotions. "Does Mom know about this?" he asked. I took a deep breath. This was the hardest part. "I don't know yet," I answered carefully. "But for now, we need to keep our distance until everything becomes clear. Some people are coming to help us." "That's why we're hiding?" he asked, suddenly more alert. "Mom doesn't want me to get better." His words stunned me. "I don't know that for sure, son," I answered honestly, "but we'll find out. Together, I promise." Ryan fell quiet for a moment, then looked at me with determination. "I always knew, or at least I suspected. Sometimes when I was alone, I tried to move my legs and I could, but when I told Mom, she panicked. She said it was dangerous, that it could make my spine worse." He swallowed. "And then, every time I tried to talk about it again, they gave me medicine that made me sleepy and confused. After a while, I started doubting my own feelings." "Medicine?" I asked urgently. "I don't know exactly," he said. "White pills Mom said were for pain, but Dr. Miller never mentioned them when you were around." The realization stole my breath. They hadn't just restrained him physically, they had drugged him to keep him compliant and silent. I was about to respond when we heard raised voices in the hallway. I immediately recognized Emily's voice, demanding to see her son. A deeper voice followed, undoubtedly Dr. Miller. "You can't go in there, sir, ma'am," another voice said. "Hospital security. These are Dr. Reed's orders." "I am her mother," Emily shouted. "I have the right to see my child." "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I need direct authorization from Dr. Reed." Ryan looked at me in terror. I wrapped my arms protectively around him. "It's okay, son. I won't let anyone hurt you ever again." The voices faded down the corridor, but I knew Emily wouldn't give up that easily. If there was one thing I had learned over the past 2 days, it was this. I did not truly know the woman I had married. My phone vibrated. A message from Dr. Jonathan Reed. "Detective Brooks is here. We're on our way. Don't open the door." Only a few minutes later, we heard a soft knock. "Mr. Hartman, this is Dr. Reed. I'm with Detective Evan Brooks." I opened the door cautiously. Dr. Reed stepped inside, accompanied by a man in his early 50s, tall, serious-looking, yet oddly reassuring. "Daniel Hartman," Dr. Reed said, making the introduction. "Ryan, this is Detective Brooks." "Nice to meet you," the detective said, shaking my hand. "Dr. Reed has explained the situation." "This is very serious," I said. "Can you help us?" "That's what we're here to try," he replied calmly. "But first, I need to ask some questions to understand exactly what's going on." For the next half hour, the detective questioned both Ryan and me. Ryan talked about the special medications his mother had given him, about how she constantly told him he should never try to walk, about how she planted fear in him, fear that I would be disappointed if I ever found out he could move his legs. I told him about the bank transfer records I had found, about the inconsistencies in the medical reports Dr. Reed had uncovered, about Emily's strange behavior ever since we met the new doctor. "This is extremely troubling," the detective said at last. "We have enough indications to open a formal investigation, but we need more concrete evidence." "What kind of evidence?" I asked. "Documentation proving medical fraud, and most importantly, motive. If your wife and Dr. Miller have been submitting medical reports for 7 years, there must be records somewhere. And there's always a reason. Money, perhaps," he added thoughtfully. "But this kind of fraud is too risky and too prolonged to be just about money. There's usually something more." Dr. Reed, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Security just informed me that Mrs. Hartman and Dr. Miller are still in the hospital trying to access restricted areas." "We should detain them," he suggested. "We don't have a warrant," the detective replied. "We can't arrest them without solid evidence, but we can make sure they stay away from Ryan." He turned to me. "Mr. Hartman, we need to search your house for evidence. Is there anyone who can look after your son while we do that?" I thought of my sister, Aunt Clara, but after everything that had happened, I didn't want to put her in danger. "Ryan can stay here at the hospital," I said. "Dr. Reed said he'll be safe and can continue his therapy." "I agree," the detective said. "And you, Mr. Hartman, are you willing to come with me to your house?" "Of course," I answered, without hesitation. "I'll do whatever it takes." I knelt in front of Ryan and held both his hands. "Son, Dad has to go with the detective to finish this. You'll be safe here with Dr. Reed." Ryan nodded, though fear was clear in his eyes. "Be careful," he whispered. "Mom isn't who we thought she was." "I know," I said, kissing his forehead. "I'll be back soon, I promise." Dr. Reed stepped closer. "Ryan will be safe here. Security will guard the door. Only authorized staff will be allowed in." As we prepared to leave, my phone rang. It was Emily. The detective gestured for me to answer and turn on speaker mode. "Where are you, Daniel?" Emily demanded, skipping any greeting. Her voice was tense. "We're worried about Ryan." "He's in good hands," I replied calmly. "Dr. Reed says he can fully recover with therapy." Silence. "What exactly did that doctor tell you?" she asked, cautiously. "The truth, Emily," I said. "That Ryan doesn't have a permanent spinal injury, that he can walk, that his medical records have been falsified for years." Another silence, longer this time. "Daniel, you don't understand anything," she said at last, her tone turning threatening. "If you continue this, there will be consequences for you and Ryan." The detective motioned for me to keep going. "What kind of consequences?" I asked. "More lies? More drugs to keep our son sedated? Or something worse?" "You don't understand anything," she said coldly. "Everything I did was for this family. Keeping Ryan in that wheelchair for 7 years was for our own good. For our good? I napped, unable to hold back my anger. You have to listen to me, she insisted. There are things you don't know, things you wouldn't understand. Come home. We'll talk. The detective shook his head, warning me not to agree. No, Emily, I said. I don't trust you anymore. If you want to talk, you can do it in front of the police. The police? Her voice cracked for the first time. You called the police? Yes, I confirmed. Detective Brooks is with me right now. I heard murmuring on the other end of the line, as if she were speaking to someone else. Then her voice returned, completely different, almost resigned. I see. Maybe this really can't be avoided anymore, she said quietly. But before you make any conclusions, you need to know something. This wasn't my idea. I froze. It was all planned by Uncle Bernard. My mind reeled. Uncle Bernard, my father's older brother, a man I barely saw anymore. There had always been tension between him and my father, but I never knew why. Uncle Bernard? I asked, stunned. What does he have to do with this? Everything, Emily replied. He arranged it from the very beginning. He promised us a lot of money, money we desperately needed after you sold the workshop to pay for Ryan's treatment. I don't understand, I said, my world collapsing around me. Why would he do this to Ryan? Silence. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. Because of your father's inheritance. Ryan is the only grandchild, the only direct heir after you. If something happened to you, and Ryan was declared legally incapable of managing his assets due to disability, Uncle Bernard would be next in line. My thoughts spun wildly. My father, who had died 10 years ago, had left behind land, property, and substantial savings. I inherited everything, but I never dwelt on it. My focus was always my workshop and my family. You're saying all this, years of Ryan's suffering, just for money? Not just money, Emily replied. Uncle Bernard always believed your father betrayed him in the family business. This was his revenge, destroying what your father loved most, his son and his grandson. Detective Brooks looked at me gravely. This confession is far more than we had expected to obtain over the phone, he said. Mrs. Hartman, I strongly advise you to turn yourself in. What you've admitted involves medical fraud, child abuse, and conspiracy. I know, Emily interrupted, her voice utterly defeated. But you have to understand, I wasn't entirely acting on my own. I was pressured, manipulated. That will be for the judge to decide, the detective said firmly. Where can we find you? I'm in the hospital parking lot, she replied. Dr. Miller just left. He said he needed to destroy some documents. What documents? The detective asked sharply. The original medical reports, proof of payments, everything. He keeps them in a safe at his private clinic. There are also copies at our house, hidden in a secret compartment behind the wardrobe in our bedroom. The detective looked at me and nodded. This information is extremely important. We're coming to pick you up now, Mrs. Hartman. Don't try to run. I won't, she said quietly. I'm tired of running. I just want to see Ryan one last time, to apologize. That will be for the judge to decide, the detective repeated before ending the call. We move fast, Detective Brooks said. He immediately contacted his team to detain Emily in the parking lot and sent another unit to Dr. Miller's clinic. Then he and I headed to my house to retrieve the evidence Emily had described. During the drive, my thoughts spiraled. Uncle Bernard, the uncle I had barely seen in years. His revenge against my father. Emily, manipulated or willingly complicit. It all felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Mr. Hartman, the detective said, pulling me out of my thoughts. I know this is incredibly heavy, but you need to focus on the positive. Your son is safe. He can recover, and now you both have a chance to rebuild your lives. I nodded, grateful for his words. He was right. Despite everything, there was light at the end of the tunnel. Ryan could walk. He could live a normal life, and I would be there for every single step. When we arrived at the house, the detective entered first, weapon drawn to make sure it was safe. Once he confirmed no one was inside, he led me to the bedroom Emily and I had shared for more than 20 years. Following her instructions, we pushed the wardrobe aside and found a sliding panel, revealing a small hidden compartment. Inside was a black folder. The detective put on gloves before opening it. The contents were exactly as Emily had described. Copies of falsified medical reports, bank transfer records, and something else. Photographs of Ryan, taken secretly, trying to stand when he thought no one was watching. Beside them were detailed notes documenting his physical progress, as if they were recording proof that he was never truly paralyzed at all. But the most shocking discovery was a handwritten letter addressed to Emily, signed by Uncle Bernard. In it, he laid out the entire plan. How they would exploit Ryan's minor accident and turn it into something far more serious. How they would manipulate doctors. How they would keep me in complete ignorance. All with one final goal: to destroy my brother's son, just as he destroyed my life. The detective read the letter with a grim expression and carefully placed it into an evidence bag. "This is more than enough," he said. "With this and your wife's confession over the phone, we have a very strong case." My phone rang. It was Dr. Jonathan Reed. "Mr. Hartman, I have good news," he said. "Your wife has been detained in the parking lot, and the police have just arrested Dr. Miller while he was trying to leave the city. Ryan is safe, and he's asking for you." "I'm on my way," I replied, overwhelmed with relief. "How is he?" "Remarkably well," the doctor said warmly. "He's a very strong young man. His therapist says his progress is incredible. He can already stand on his own for several minutes." Tears streamed down my face. My son, my brave son, was reclaiming everything that had been stolen from him. Back at the hospital, I ran toward Ryan's room. When I stepped inside, I froze. Ryan was standing between the parallel therapy bars installed in his room, taking small, trembling steps, unsteady but determined. When he saw me, he smiled. A smile filled with pride and hope, one that shattered my heart and rebuilt it all at once. "Look, Dad," he said, taking another step. "I can walk." I wrapped him in a tight embrace, letting the tears fall freely. Not tears of anger or sorrow anymore, but of gratitude and hope. "Yes, son," I whispered. "You can walk, and no one will ever stop you again." In the weeks that followed, while Emily, Dr. Miller, and Uncle Bernard faced trial for their crimes, Ryan and I began rebuilding our lives. His progress in physiotherapy was extraordinary. The doctors said his body had always been capable of functioning normally. He simply needed to relearn what they had forced him to forget. We moved to a small house on the outskirts of town, far from painful memories. I bought a piece of land and opened a new workshop, smaller than the old one, but ours. Ryan developed an interest in automotive work, and we spent hours together restoring old engines side by side. One evening, as we sat on the porch of our new home, Ryan asked a question I knew he'd been holding on to for weeks. "Dad, do you think someday I could forgive Mom?" He didn't need to say her name. We both knew. "I don't know, son," I answered honestly. "Forgiveness is deeply personal. It's something only you can decide, if and when you're ready to give it. What I do know is this: we can't live trapped in the past, in the pain they caused. That would mean letting them continue to control us." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes I think about Mom, about how she was before all this," he said softly. "The bedtime stories she used to read, the way she held me when I was scared." "Those memories are yours, Ryan," I said. "No one can take them from you. and they don't become less real just because she later did terrible things. Have you forgiven her, Dad? He asked, looking straight into my eyes. I paused before answering. I'm learning not to let hatred and revenge rule my life, I said at last. I don't know if that's forgiveness, but it's the best I can do for now. Ryan smiled and looked back towards the horizon, where the sun was slowly setting. You know, I think one day I can forgive her, he said. Not for her, but for myself, because I want to be free, truly free. I looked at him with pride and awe. My son, despite everything he had endured, or perhaps because of it, had developed a wisdom far beyond his years. You are the bravest and wisest young man I know, Ryan, I said, placing my hand on his shoulder. He leaned against me, and together we watched the sun disappear, replaced by a star-filled night. A new night, in a new life, finally free from the chains that had bound us for so many years. And in that moment, as I held my son, now standing on his own, I understood something deeply. True suffering is not the hardship we face, but allowing that hardship to define who we are and what we become.